At first, in the presence of the Al-Qaeda commanders in prison in Syria, I tried desperately to understand. But for the life of me, and my life was at stake, I could not make sense of what was going on. Who were these people? What did they want? They refused to talk to me. They would not let me turn my eyes in their direction. I did not know where I was. Is it day or night? I did not know. During this first period of my imprisonment, every few days, they came into my cell with the cables. In Arabic, they call this punishment eating the cables. I concluded from these sessions, when they were doing this to me, that they believed I was a CIA agent. I knew that they were angry at the CIA. They were angry at the CIA for Iraq, for droning their friends in Afghanistan and Yemen. Okay, I said, they're taking their revenge. But 6 months after they first gave me the cable, made me eat the cable, long after I had confessed to being a CIA agent, long after they had expressed to me through the cable their feelings about Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib and the killing of their sheikh, Abu bin Laden. They had expressed their feelings about sex in America, about the war that the Christians are allegedly conducting against the Muslims. Long, long after they had said all of these things, they were still making me eat the cable. Eventually, I gave up on trying to make sense of their psychology. As my first year in prison turned into my second, I started to think they themselves have no idea why they are doing what they are doing. During my darkest period, when I was covered in lice and they weren't giving me enough to eat, I stopped caring about their psychology at all. I have been caught in a storm at sea, I told myself. That's what it felt like. The wind had me. The ocean had me. Perhaps I will survive, I thought. Perhaps not. But there was no point in wondering about the psychology of this force because it had no psychology. I had stumbled into a natural phenomenon, I thought, with which science, psychologists, sociologists had yet to reckon. This made sense, this ignorance of the scientific world, us, the West, of the phenomenon occurring there. This made sense to me because scientists are smart enough not to go wandering through the hallways of the Al-Qaeda prisons. Someday, ages hence, I thought, after I'm gone, someone will make sense of what has been happening in Aleppo. As Primo Levi and Elie Wiesel made sense out of what happened to the Jews in Germany. But this was an idle fantasy. I knew this even then, and I didn't believe in my survival. Didn't believe that the arc of the universe would bend toward justice, like that I would get out and start making sense of things. And I certainly didn't believe in a book about Aleppo that would make sense of my nightmare. During the preceding weeks, I had devised an escape route for myself. It wasn't an escape through a window or a door, and it certainly wasn't the way I wanted to leave this place in which I was imprisoned. That was the children's hospital. But it was going to put an end to my torment. It was going to be relatively painless. My big issue with it was that I knew my mother wasn't going to like it. So in the early morning darkness, as the sun was coming up, after they had their Fajr, Salat al-Fajr, the first prayer of the day, I tried my level best to make my escape route work. I tried once, and then I gave up, and then I tried again. I tried for hours. I mention this dark moment in my life now because it really happened, because I want the world to know that they are bringing their prisoners every day, even now, today, dozens of them, to the point at which they no longer want to live. They're ready to check out on their own. And that they are able to do this because the Western governments send money and guns to the Syrian rebels. How else will they capture their hospitals? How will they hold the roads that allow them to maintain control over those hospitals? They are able to do this because we have been sending them the latest guns and piles of money. Forget about me for a moment. I'm fine. It's like you don't need to worry about my problems. I'm fine. I'm perfectly okay. It's the men and women undergoing these tortures in Syria now I'm concerned with. The Western governments are on the side of the torturers, and I don't understand this. You know, you don't know you don't really know what you're confessing to, and once you do confess, you don't know what they're going to do to you. But you want them to stop doing what they're doing, so you go, I did it. And I'm not a CIA agent, but I told them, like, I made up phone numbers, I made up everything to persuade them. You know, I promise. And I was so afraid of, like, having them bring me back into the torture room that I was like, I really tried hard to make my confession believable. And when they would come to me just casually and ask, where are you from? I always had CIA right away. Because I didn't want them to say, if I just said, I'm not from the CIA, come, ta'al. And they bring me back in there. So there is lots of torture happening. That's very reprehensible and bad. We should encourage all torturers to stop torturing. The thing is that, I mean, what can I really say? We know that there are no such things as Geneva Conventions operating in Syria today. There are war crimes being committed on both sides. The thing that we want is the most peace for the most people as soon as possible. That should be our goal, and I think the quickest way to that goal is to support the existing authority that, that under which right now 16 million people or so in Damascus and Homs and Aleppo are living. And to overthrow the existing authority means, to me, like what's happening in Yemen right now. It's just everybody against everybody. Chaos for on and on and on. So we don't want that. No, it's a disgrace. Our journalists have done such a poor job of communicating the reality on the ground. The journalists will not admit this, but they cannot go to these places. They like support and love the people of the places, but they can't go there because they know themselves they would get their heads cut off if they went there. I wish they would write that, like, we love these people, blah, 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 we think they're great, blah, blah, blah. However, we can't go there because they would cut our heads off. The journalists were calling in, hello, what's it like? Give me the statistics that you wish to give. So all those statistics, like all the numbers of dead people that we believe are facts, are really have been piped in by people with an agenda from the eastern side of Syria. I'm not saying that the guys on the other side do not also invent facts. I'm sure they do. But, it's just that we have no capacity to imagine why they need to distort the reality on the ground. They do distort it. Most journalists that write for The Guardian and The New York Times, The Washington Post, call their sources when they can't go either to the regime side and they don't want to go to the rebel side. I mean, that's like 99% of them, that's the way they are. But they all have, they all have sources in Syria, and some of these people are themselves journalists. So, in Damascus is a flourishing journalism industry. They're publishing newspapers every day. And are they all trained to gather information accurately and truthfully and the way that they would train you here? No, but that doesn't mean they're not doing a good job. There's like tons of video every day is being pumped onto YouTube. It's like you could do a good job reporting about Syria just by watching YouTube, I think. They fail to understand the most basic aspects of the conflict in Syria. The white helmets is a good example. Like, everybody loves the white helmets, but I realize they're rescuing some people, but they're killing other people, and we don't want to support them because we don't want to support murderers. And we have videos of them like present and murdering other people. Maybe they're not pulling the gun, but they're certainly assisting, and they're like waving the Al-Qaeda flag. We're sending millions and millions of dollars to them, and those dollars and euros are in the hands of Jabhat al-Nusra in an instant. Listen, Jabhat al-Nusra does a nice job of rescuing people from the rubble. It's like, it's not only the white helmets that goes and rescues guys, it's Jabhat al-Nusra also does it. So should we support Jabhat al-Nusra? They kill and they rescue. The white helmets kill and rescue. We really want to support the actual peacemakers. And the peacemakers are like few and far between. I think they're not relying enough, basically. I mean, I think they should rely more. I don't know, but even the local guys, they have agendas too, perhaps more than we do. Certainly more than we do. So they have to be discriminating. And the major thing with Syria for me is that the most basic fundamental aspects of the conflict, like who is right, who is wrong, what should we do? We don't agree on this. We have no cultural or we have agreed. We've agreed that the regime bombed these people in Khan Sheikhoun and that the Assad regime should be removed, and that it would be like the moral thing to do is to either kill or displace somehow take Bashar al-Assad and make him go away and bring in a new government. This is why does the American government and the UK government and the French government, this is their official policies. We don't like this guy. We want to get him the hell out, and we want other people in there. We're going to support the other people. The reason why we believe this is because our fundamental understanding of what's right in Syria is wrong. And that's because our journalists are incompetent. You ask, like, how to make them more competent? Well, they got to study more. They got to learn the language, the Quran. They got to just understand the culture better. Read the signs more carefully, more deeply. Like, I got in trouble because I did not understand what the fuck was going on there. I'm like, these rebels are nice and sweet. And they were like, no, they're not. Whack. Yeah, I think because they have been persuaded by incompetent journalists that the shibboleth you hear from the journalists is there will be no peace in Syria until Bashar al-Assad is removed. So they want peace, but first they have to remove Bashar al-Assad. So my feeling is that why do they believe this? They just are credulous. They just think, like the journalists go, there will be no peace in Syria until we get rid of the regime. So they go, okay, let's get rid of the regime. Also, they see these horrible crimes that the regime is indeed committing. And they go, how can we tolerate this? The journalists have persuaded people like Samantha Power, who's a very moral figure in the Obama administration, that the moral thing to do, like the West, it is incumbent, morally speaking, on the West to stop this genocide that is underway against the Syrian people. So we've got to do this. But I know that the Jabhat al-Nusra people have like genocidal feeling against the minorities and are trying to exterminate the men, women, and children, totally capable of want to use chemical weapons and completely capable and energized and excited about it, whereas the regime is not at all interested in genociding anybody. This is like a myth. It's not true. If they wanted to, they would just go out and walk out their front door and kill people, which Jabhat al-Nusra does. The regime doesn't do this. I mean, I think we should persuade the regime to stop committing atrocities. We should use moral suasion and bribes and anything we can. We should be on our knees in front of them to save the Syrian people, because they are clearly committing atrocities, and we have the ability to. They will negotiate. You can talk to them. You cannot talk to anybody else, but you can talk to them, and they have existing authority and power. We have existing relationships with them, and we should, in order to save the Syrian people, we've kicked all their ambassadors out of all of our countries. There's no Syrian embassy here anymore. But we should, in order to save the Syrian people, be on our knees in front of them and bribing them and asking them to do anything so that they will stop committing these horrible crimes against their people.